Hi, I'm Allison. Together with Julia, we are the co-founders of Deep Talks. Deep Talks creates spaces for thought-provoking conversations on the topics that matter. And at this moment, COVID is the topic that matters most.
With Corona Talks, we aim to spark deep conversations and engage our audience into active discussion around key areas impacted by the crisis, with an ultimate goal to empower all of us to take active action. For this, every Corona Talk episode consists of two parts. First is a live expert panel discussion, a recording of which you are just about to watch, always followed by a small group discussion between our panelists and selected part of our audience of every episode.
So here is Corona Talks. We hope you feel inspired by this episode. Let us know what you think and join the conversation in the link below. Thank you.
So while I will be introducing our panelists, please take a moment to answer one question in our anonymous quiz so that we could get a feeling what is the general mood in our today's audience. Thank you very much. And now I am thrilled to introduce our panelists. So first is Pedzai Muchenje, preferably known as Pedzai, Cape Town-based accountant, brains behind Pearmalchaela Consulancy and a mom of three, currently busy with an Oxford economy program. Pedzai boasts over 13 years of experience in accounting. She's a lecturer and an owner of a successful company that supplies women with accessories. Then we have Gennaro Brooks-Church. He is a New York-based artist. He works in photography and in live balls. He is a founder of website spirit.one, soon to be one of the largest platforms for spirituality. And Gennaro holds a controversial view that the global lockdown will cause more deaths than the actual virus. He is also outspoken against the civil liberty issues which the lockdown is rising. And last but not least, we have Sönke Bartling. Sönke is a board-certified radiologist and scientist in basic medical imaging scientist. Sönke studied in Hanover and in Boston, and he is interested in how science, culture, and statistical literacy or illiteracy influences how we come to conclusions and how we question things. So from the beginning of the crisis, Sönke is amazed to see how discussions of our science culture are led by very broad and sometimes completely unprepared audience, and he will hopefully help us to get some things right tonight. So on this note, let us start. And first, let us have a quick look at our poll. So right now I see that answering the question, do you think the lockdown is causing more harm than good? 29% said yes, 50% said no, and 21% say, I do not know. So probably this is really like how we all feel here, and hopefully our discussion will help us to get a bit more clarity. So on this note, let us start. And I would like to open with a quick personal story, how I understood the importance of raising this specific topic. So as many of you know, I'm Ukrainian, but I've been living for many years in Germany. And a few weeks ago, I had a phone call with my friend from Kyiv, my hometown. And she dropped a sentence: given how poor and vulnerable so many people here are, for many it may be better to die from the virus than to starve without knowing how to cover their basic needs. Because virus is sometimes hypothetical, where starvation not. And that made me realize how true is this saying, that maybe we are all in the same boat, but we are not in the same storm. So today I'm very grateful to have a very international panel with Gennaro dialing in from New York, Pedzai from Cape Town, and Sönke and myself from Berlin. So that's why, as a starting point to ground the conversation, I'd like to ask you all, are you happy with the crisis response in your country? And if no, in what country would you like to be?
Okay, so I just start. Yeah, I'm happy with the crisis response, and I'm happy to be in Germany for the time being. Yeah.
Do you want maybe to add a few sentences?
Yeah.
Why is it so?
Yeah, so I think we were in the very lucky situation that very early on we realized what was coming, and so we had the experiences in the more harder hit areas, like in Italy and France and the Alsace, and we could learn from this. And we had like our scientists that basically pumped up the testing very early on, so that we could like start a soft lockdown and then a hard lockdown, a pretty mild one actually, very early on, and we could learn from the experience of others, so prevent the worst from happening. And we are at the moment we are in a situation where we can start slowly thinking about reopening the economy. And then on the other side, I had my personal experiences as a radiologist in a university hospital in southern Germany. So I actually got really in touch with patients, saw patients, and I was always like, in the beginning, I was like, are we overdoing things here? Is it crazy? And from a medical perspective, it was very relieving to see. Don't misunderstand me here, relieving. I was glad that I could actually see that there are patients coming in. We could like treat them normally, and they were not just like a common flu patient. And we saw pattern in the CT scans that we haven't seen before. And some doctors actually got infected, but we had enough capacity to treat them. So at the moment, I think everything is good at the moment. But we'll see.
Thank you. Pedzai, what about you? Oh, Pedzai, you're on mute. Wait.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. From South Africa, I must say I'm actually proud to be in South Africa right now. And I applaud the government for the stance that they have taken against the COVID-19. Currently, we are in a hard lockdown. We have levels of risks as far as the coronavirus is concerned. So we are currently in level 5, which is the highest risk. So the government has taken a centralized stance whereby it's controlling everything. So everyone is locked down indoors. You only go out to get essential services, that is your groceries, or if you're not feeling well. I'm actually grateful because especially in the urban areas, we are very populatively dense. There are a lot of people. And if this control and this measure is not in place, there could have been greater spread of the virus. And right now, as we speak, as of yesterday, we had about 4,793 confirmed cases and 90 deaths. So we are on day 34 of the lockdown. I believe that it has slowed down the spread and the government has done a very good job. You know, I wouldn't wish to be anywhere right now.
Thank you so much. It feels really like, depending on where you are, how densely populated is the situation, how well equipped is the healthcare system. For some, maybe lockdown can be like very, very difficult and questionable, and for others, it is like exactly the right thing. So thank you for your perspective. What about you, Gennaro?
Well, I'm torn about the whole thing. The United States overall is actually not as strong a lockdown as some countries. For example, it's more decided by the state. So we do have the president doing what he's doing, and then we have each individual state making up their own local laws. So, for example, in New York City, it's a law to wear a mask now, but it is not enforceable. They are not able to write you a ticket or arrest you if you do not wear a mask. My concern, and it's if you are unable to stay more than 6 feet from somebody else. So you don't have to wear it if you're more than 6 feet from somebody else. My concern, however, is the implications on our civil liberties. And if this should be taken to a further step where, for example, our governor, his name's Governor Cuomo, he's created essentially a monologue where every day he gets up and he talks, and his way is the way we're going to go. And I feel that such a monologue is not the democratic process. It feels like a power grab on his part. And my concern is that if this should be taken to another level, where we have, for example, mandatory vaccines, or we have mandatory chip implants, so that we perhaps don't use normal money, but we just scan our palm. And my concern is not that those things are necessarily bad, because I do see the benefit in some of those things. I see the benefit in a lockdown. My concern is the loss of civil liberties. So I would prefer something more along the lines of everybody is allowed to do what they feel is best for their own body. But if you do need support in terms of you feel like you are immunocompromised, or for some reason you are very afraid of the virus, you should get the support that you need. If that means somebody goes out and does shopping for you, or somebody gets your medications and you stay inside. If you need some sort of protection, then you're given that protection. And those who decide that their life is their own and they are not afraid of the virus, in fact, they might want to get it because it creates group immunity, then they should be allowed to go and get the virus if they want to. I think that should be a decision that each individual should be allowed to make. I'm not saying that people aren't going to die. I do acknowledge this is a very serious thing. I have a mother who is elderly and has chest issues. If she were to get it, there's a possibility she would die. I'm not taking this very lightly, but I do feel like the slippery slope we're on is a very dangerous one, and we need to be very careful that our civil liberties are not imposed upon. I can't hear you, Julia.
Yeah. Oh, you're
Julia,
muted. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I said thank you for sharing this perspective, because this one seems to slip a little bit away from the mass media. But yeah, some governments have already proactively taken stand, like Hungarian or Russian, but it may be really already the way for many others to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, there was like I would say like a shock phase, right? When there was like just the executive speaking of the governments, basically the president or our chancellor, and she basically decided in like executive processes far away from parliament processes that we have like to have a lockdown, and like lawyers almost like went crazy on the social media, and we never had this situation. And then I felt it was like an urge that the executive had like somehow overrule our normal processes in some way. And now we are like seeing that these things are coming slowly but securing back, and people like demonstrating, asking what is our civil rights here? Is it right? Is it too much? Is it justified? And it was, and from a scientist perspective, basically the governments, and they were like famous scientists speaking out, we don't have data here, we don't have data, we cannot justify a lockdown because it might well do much more harm than just a disease. But the argument I'm saying here is we couldn't wait until we have data, right? Because we are like on a driving car and we have to make decisions, right? We can't wait until we see the end of the road in both paths that we could have taken, right? So, and now we are like seeing slowly these things come back, and certainly there have been mistakes done and things might look weird in the outside. Some people communicated funny stuff, but overall I think all the governments are doing a more or less good job in these crisis times, right? So this is my opinion, at least. Okay, but coming back to Pedzai, how is the situation in South Africa with people are concerned about their civil rights? Do they march to the streets, or are they like, it's okay, we have to do this all? And
Pedzai, you're on mute.
All right, Sönke, unfortunately from our side, it's not a matter of civil rights, it's a matter of survival. Because our economy boasts a lot of this. The informal sector is the biggest sector. And this is the sector where the majority of people are self-employed, they've got small businesses, and they earn a living from hand to mouth. So now people are trying to fight for survival, because if they stay indoors, they cannot have an income, bills are piling up, rent is due, they have to feed their families. So it's more of a matter of survival, of which the government has been coming up with plans to meet the individuals affected, the social grants that have been increased for children, for single mothers, for the elderly. And there is also a $500 billion budget to help and assist businesses. But the time span is too short for the government to come up with a comprehensive plan that can cover everyone. So right now we are having a situation where people are grumbling indoors, but there is no one voice. But the concern is people want to survive. They need to earn money in order to survive. So we've had private companies and other charitable organizations donating food. And we also have a high case of informal settlements where people stay in very bad conditions. So the Human Settlement Department has kicked in, and they're putting makeshift accommodation to provide the basics for the people. So it's not more of civil rights, it's more of survival, because most people live from hand to mouth. That is the biggest challenge right now.
I have a question for you, Pedzai. You said that 4,000 were infected.
Yes.
And 9 died. Now those numbers, I think that we can discuss whether those numbers are accurate or not. But if those are correct numbers, that means 0.02%.
Yes, it's about 2%.
Who are infected. Yeah. I don't see that as cause for shutting down the country.
But it may be a result, so that because people have complied and are sitting at home, this death rate is low.
No. I see what you're saying, Julia, but these are out of the people who have gotten it. I'm not talking to the people who are quarantining and did not get it. Out of the people who got it, 90 people have died. And so that's a 0.02% death rate. it's minuscule. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not a lot of per infection, I mean, maybe Sönke, you could describe this better than I can.
Yeah.
But the amount of people dying from the illness is incredibly low if those are the real numbers in South Africa. So why is the whole country in lockdown for such minuscule numbers? This is not something that's ravaging the population. 0.02% of the population is getting it, according to Pedzai's numbers. So that's where I come in, and I just say it doesn't make sense to me. More people are dying from heart disease by far.
Yeah.
So why have we not addressed that? Why is that not a big deal to us? Most people don't even know that. So
yeah, maybe that's
I have some serious ethical problems with this.
I
Julia,
agree.
you're still on.
Yeah. So, okay. So it's not only South Africa that has like a certain death rate. It's also like the United States and Europe, right? There's like all over the world, people get earlier or later get infected. And we will have like from those that get infected, the numbers at the moment are between 0.3 to 1% that will actually die. Right? I don't know what the ratio is with treatment or without treatment and ICU treatment. I don't think we have data for that at the moment. Right? So, but if you calculate the number and let's say for a certain immunity, like this always quoted herd immunity, like you need to have 70% of Americans or South Africans or European getting infected, and of those 0.5 or let's say 1% will die. And calculate this number, it will end up in like hundreds of thousands, right? Which is then a big number. And this is a big number in a short time, in a short period of time. But still compared to these people that die through alcoholism or heart attack or cigarettes, it's still a number that is not extraordinary like during the Spanish flu. And I completely agree with you on this. And well, at the moment we decided that we want to like save the healthcare system so that we can treat these patients that actually get into the hospital, give them treatment. Otherwise, all these people will, like many more people will die. And it's a very valuable question to ask whether the economic lockdown does more harm than than the shutdown or the actual virus. Yeah, but everybody was afraid of this. So, and there was a shock moment. We saw these pictures from the hospitals and we just didn't want to have the situation in our hospital. So we concluded in some informal ways that our societies are supported or have enough power to like cope with the situation in a different way than just like have people dying in the hospital and stockpile like bodies on like some ice skating ranges and yeah. So we don't have. I don't think we had numbers on that, or we don't know yet, right? That's why we are here. We are discussing these things. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's not. There's not an easy answer to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have looked at World Bank or International Monetary Fund. They estimate like the biggest economic recession, bigger than anything like we had compared to losses of World War II. So this is kind of like, yeah, what countries take in consideration. And the question which like basically I have in mind that this is like this lockdown which we have never experienced in our generation, and it caught us off guard. It will impact our life, but basically it can be just a first lockdown from many more to come.
Yeah.
Because you might have seen those illustrations on internet, how doctors are looking down the COVID curve, and behind their back much huge wave of climate change is rising. So this is basically one of the questions which I had in mind while starting this conversation. what shall we all like learn from this? Obviously, even if we are in one of the most prosperous countries like Germany, who can give their freelancers 5,000 per pocket without any questions, some other countries do not, especially countries where there are like some refugee camps where many people are really very vulnerable. How can this be sustained in the long run, and what can we like learn from ourselves to get better prepared for the future? It is already like more general, so maybe to a little bit stream down the question, I would go with Pedzai, because Pedzai, you are living in South Africa. Yes, as you said, where people cannot expect that much support from the government, and as you mentioned, majority of people are always hustling to make ends meet, even without the crisis. So how has lockdown affected you personally, and how are you dealing and adapting with this kind of change?
Okay, it hasn't been easy, but just to give more feedback on my thinking on the government lockdown, it's more for preventive measures, because if large amounts of people get infected, our health system cannot sustain it. So it's more of delaying the inevitable and to come up with an approach on how to handle it. Probably to try and get as much PPEs in the country, medication, ventilators, etc., to cater for the worst case scenario. So I think that's why the government has done this level 5 lockdown. As you can see, the numbers, they didn't spread that much. We've closed all our borders. There's not even inter-province travel. So I think it's it's a preventive measure, because our health system will not be able to handle all the cases should everyone be infected, especially the informal settlements. And South Africa has got the highest number of immigrants than any other African country. So that's something else that the government had to consider. There are a lot of undocumented people who will later come up as cases. So I think they just needed this time to go on the drawing board and plan according to what is on the ground. Just like Sönke said, there was no data to work with. And I think this is the period they are using to collect the data. And then to me, well, it's been life-changing. As a lecturer and as a teacher, we have moved from classroom learning to online learning, which is another cause for concern if we look at our population, because yes, the people in the towns and urban environment can have access to online education, but we also have the rural areas and the remote areas that don't even have data network. These guys don't even know about smartphones. What's going to be implemented as far as education is concerned for those citizens? So personally, as a teacher, as a lecturer in the education industry, I'm glad I can still be able to help some students and some learners, but the concern is also for the underprivileged on how their children are going to access the education. So personally, I've had to juggle doing online classes, teaching my own children, still being a mother and running the household. It hasn't been easy, but it's teamwork. It's working out. We're getting used to it now.
Wow, Pedzai, you can be really like an inspiration and example of a person who has so many things on your plate, and you still like remain very like positive. It seems also that your government has done a very good job into properly communicated and justifying the measures. Because like coming quickly back to medical topic, situation in Germany, what is a real story happening from Berlin. So my friend, she has a small baby boy, and last Friday or Saturday she was in a hospital trying to arrange surgery for him. And the doctor said, sorry, we cannot give you an appointment because we need to be on standby. However, the same doctor also admitted that 80% of beds in Germany were empty. And that made her, my friend, very concerned because she could not stay 3 days just waiting for time when they say, now we operate. She has another small kid at home, so she could not just do it. And that is probably the question where my friend is not alone, and many people may kind of cancel their appointments, or they do not get access to necessary treatment because system is on standby, but in reality this wave is not coming. So Sönke, maybe it is like also a question for you. Do you think it is fair to let so many people like suffer practically against this, for many, at least in Germany, hypothetical threat?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point that you're bringing up. So yeah, the hospital beds are like, many are empty. They are like filling up again. A lot of people didn't go to the ER anymore because they were afraid of getting the coronavirus in a hospital. And also like planned procedures were cancelled. Like, but it's like, it's changing slowly again. So we are like, but I mean, necessary treatments like to defend our a little bit were like still done. But I have to admit that there can be situations where like usual routine treatments were not done and they didn't end up with the right decision for the patient because of all the coronavirus situation. And to say whether it was fair or not, I think it's very unfair for your girlfriend, and that she had like this issue with her baby, and there were empty hospital beds. So, but we are like noticing this, and we are like changing, and so most things can be like changed in the hospitals within days perspective. So this can be but I think the point that you want to make here is, it's like the trade-off with the overall lockdown and economy versus diseased patients or ill patients, or like planned treatment versus like being prepared against for the coronavirus wave that is not coming. And that's a very interesting question. And I don't know. I'm afraid to say that at the moment we don't know. Like, maybe the people were afraid like going with like heart attack symptoms to the hospital. There's some heart attacks that have very mild symptoms, and even the same with strokes, and they didn't end up in the hospital. So this were like doctors in New York were very concerned. Were all the appendicitis cases? Were all the heart attacks? Maybe it's like the most funniest interpretation is that doctors are doing too much stuff all the time, right? That is not necessary, right? So it's certainly true for some fields of radiology. Okay, sorry to say that, but okay. So I don't know whether it's we don't know we will see. We will read in the future. We will read in the future. Certainly, there's a very interesting situation, a very interesting experiment, and will tell us a lot about public health and about things. But at the moment, I can't answer this question. Yeah.
Sorry, Julia, can I come in?
Of course, please.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not fair that she's being denied, a basic right, access to medication. But maybe let me shed some light on how the government has structured it in South Africa. There are COVID reference hospitals that are strictly concentrating on COVID-19. So which leaves the other hospitals and smaller clinics in the community still open and willing and able to help any other cases. So we have, there's been massive communication on when you think you've got symptoms, which number to dial. They'll come and pick you up, you go to the right hospital. But I remember 2 weeks back, my 3-year-old had tonsillitis. I went to a clinic, she got medication, she got attention, and, just like any other normal time. So maybe if resources can be distributed, there's enough information. People with COVID symptoms, they know which public hospitals to go, and you can visit your local clinic anytime. And we have private pharmacies, they have clinics as well, and they are open, giving the basic clinical services. So I think here in South Africa, that is not the case. People are getting medical attention.
Yeah, so here also to put a little bit more clarity, it is not that in Germany they have told her to completely go. They just said, you must stay here for 3 days. We cannot tell you when. It will just like happen spontaneously. And in her private situation with another small kid at home, she just could not do this. And that's why she was like very unhappy that given that the hospital is not at any brink of capacity, they simply could not say, okay, just come at hour X. So yes, simply to not saying that we completely misinterpret the facts, I think people in Germany can be very grateful for the medical system. But generally, this is exactly like this question that usually in discussions, value of lives saved right now through the lockdown is opposed to the damage to the economy. Whereas instead of using the abstract word economy, we should imagine lives cut short by poverty, by bankruptcy, unemployment, hunger, maybe the rise of domestic or gender-based violence. How do you think such situations can be addressed and managed better? It is a question to all of you.
Okay, can I come in first?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think, it still lies with the government to try and help its citizens. In South Africa, we've got a very high stats of gender-based violence, with some of the highest cases reported within the first 2 weeks of the lockdown. So I think there has to be supporting structures. We've had a heavy police presence, and there have been numerous counseling lines open to affected victims, but it's all exacerbated by the loss of income. And, then starts domestic issues at home, and most of the men get violence. But in a way, the government tried to control that, because currently, as we speak in South Africa, there is no sale of alcohol or no sale of cigarettes, which was a measure I think the Minister of Police took to try and control things like gender-based violence. So, but in the first 2 weeks, we received, we got the highest calls, and the Minister of Police deployed police. There was a heavy police presence, there was support, and now it seems to have stabilized. And we cannot run away from the fact that currently, as we speak, there are those who don't have anything on the table because mom and dad don't have an income this month. So what the government is trying to do, we have an unemployment fund, which they're trying to roll back to support all employees who could not get income. But it all takes time. It does not change the fact that there are still families suffering. So what I think should be done is the government and role players, people who can assist. In South Africa, we call it Ubuntu, looking out for your neighbor. Do they have food? Do they have the basics? Do the best that you can to assist in this case.
Thank you so much. Gennaro, when do you think lockdown is acceptable?
I've been accused of being cavalier about my attitude, and I think that's ironic because I'm not being cavalier. I honestly do think that more people will die because of the lockdown than the coronavirus. I've I've traveled. I've lived in over 40 countries on this planet. Most of the time, I was living with poor people, and poverty kills. It's very simple. There's child abuse, there's alcoholism, there's obesity, there's diabetes, there's murder, there's theft, there's all sorts of horrible things that happen when you have poverty. And I think it's a very cavalier attitude to just impose a lockdown on everybody when everybody in this panel, anybody who's able to access this detox event is going to be fine. It's not those people I'm concerned about. It's my employees who I've had to lay off, who are living almost paycheck to paycheck as it is. And it's the people in the slums of South Africa that I'm worried about. This is not an easy decision, and I think people took the lockdown and they made it fear-based. It was not an informed decision. I feel like more clarity needs to happen with the information. I think that a lot of people are sharing the information based on their own agenda, which I think is a shame. I think that more thought should have gone into the lockdown than it did. I think it was a fear-based decision. It wasn't an educated decision.
Yep. Yep. Now, I agree with you on that, but the problem is that we didn't have data at this time point, right? The criticism is out there, and it's a very valid point. We had to like steer the car while it was like riding to the junction, right? We had to go either this way and either this way without really knowing what's like at the end of the other streets. And so I divided in like a shock phase. We came beyond this shock phase, and now we have data popping up, some more solid scientific data, and we have the effects of the lockdown being discussed everywhere. And we are in the luxury situation in many countries and many areas of the world that we can like come back and like start up the economy in some way or another way. And whether this very early fear-based lockdown was justified, only the future can really tell us, right? And but now we can make more educated decision, and it was just like 4 to 6 weeks of like the shock shutdown, right? With like empty hospital beds, everything cancelled, like because nobody really knew what was coming. It's the very same. It could happen that we would like in Germany would like have stockpiled dead bodies. It was very realistic. Like 4 or 5 weeks ago, it was the scenario that could have happened. And we just didn't know that. That's why we like maybe overreacted in hindsight, but it's also because the wave didn't come that we can like think that we overreacted. In an alternative scenario, we could be sitting here and like just saying like, oh God, why didn't we should like fully lock down everything, right? It was also on the table. It was also a possible future like 4 or 5 weeks ago.
But this is what Sweden is doing right now. So what is your opinion on this? And please take 1 second to think. There is one message to our audience. I have gotten information that few of our lottery winners, they said they unfortunately cannot join. So we have a few openings spontaneously for our discussion round, which will basically go the full next hour. So if you are interested in joining a discussion and have time, please just message us your email in the chat and we will send you the dial-in details for next hour.
Could I say something about the Swedish lockdown? The Swedish lockdown is they are recommending people stay inside. It's optional, but they're strongly suggesting people stay inside. The schools have been shut down, except for I think high school.
Yeah,
it's still open, but there is a lockdown of sorts in Sweden. It's not that they're just letting people run around the streets. Now, compare that to the United States, where the schools have been shut down. It's recommended you stay inside, and essentially the United States and Sweden have the exact same strategy. Maybe the United States has that strategy because of lack of leadership, but the end result is the same.
Yeah.
I think the difference is that it's a population that's much more spread out. There's not high density cities like you have in the United States, and so I think that's why you're seeing there's more deaths in the United States. And also, New York City is a transit hub, so there's a lot of people passing through the city and bringing the virus and getting other people sick. But still, look at the numbers. The United States, if Sweden doesn't have a lockdown, then the United States doesn't have a lockdown either. It's optional.
Yeah.
The numbers are not that terrible. They really aren't. However, if you look at this, the fact that the whole economy is being decimated, what insanity is this? I don't get it. Now that's my main point. I know I'm kind of being heavy-handed, but let me raise another very important point. Personally, I love the lockdown. On a personal level, I think it's an amazing thing because it is giving us a chance to reevaluate what we call capitalism and realize that perhaps we were going too quickly. Perhaps we were consuming. Well, obviously we're destroying the planet. And on a esoteric level, on a philosophical level, I think that we were just going down a path that was not sustainable, both for the planet and for ourselves as individuals. And I think if we were to keep some of this peacefulness that we have now, that would be a very good thing. If we were to reduce the amount of consumption, that would be a very good thing. My objection is the way it's being done. It needs to be something that is not an authoritative thing from above. It needs to be a collective thing that we decide on doing together. Now, having said that, we are all living in democracies. We all elected a leader, and part of that election was we are giving the leader the power to make decisions in an executive fashion. And their decision was to shut down the planet. I think it was the wrong decision. It was definitely the wrong decision, I think. I think that we're going to suffer tremendously because of that decision, not because of the virus, but because of the economic impact. But it's not simple. It's not black and white. The benefits to this could outweigh the economic devastation if we take this as a spiritual realignment. And I think for me personally in my life, it's been amazing. I'm living off of credit cards. Yes, I'm worried about financial situation. But on an emotional level, I've gotten to a peacefulness that I haven't had for a very, very, very long time. And I think that's a silver lining here, where we can use this opportunity to realign our lives and make it more sustainable. There's a lot of different points there that I just shared, but I do think it's a complicated situation.
Thank you, Gennaro. I think that it is like really, as our panel is coming slowly to an end, a beautiful turn from these critical discussions where obviously we do not have answers and time will show, but the question is really what is something within our own private lives as individuals, what we can do, and this perspective resonates with me very much. I really feel that I am in this process of feeling myself as a part of the whole global society, that I need to think deeper about my choices, everyday choices, what I do, what I do not do, what I buy, what I not buy, like whom I go and vote, so that even if my contribution is tiny, still it is contributing to the global response. So maybe to wrap up the panel on a positive note, also a question to Pedzai and to Sönke. What positive changes and opportunities have arisen for you in this lockdown? Yeah, both for you and for the society. How do you see this?
Okay, personally, you know, we all need time. We all need to take time out. You know, we've been rolling with emotions, trying to start this, trying to raise kids. So personally, it has, like Gennaro said, I've got a peace. And my faith has been challenged as well. There are a lot of things that we thought were important, we couldn't live without, that we're living without now. And, you know, so I've taken time to read the word and find myself, find my purpose, whether I was just on this earth to make money, because sometimes the survival instinct really pushes us and we forget to take care of ourselves. So personally, I tried so many diets, but I'm working out, I'm exercising every day, though we're only allowed to do that within our complex. I take long walks and it's been fulfilling. It's just given me some kind of rest. And as far as the whole society is concerned, I think if we all self-reflect and reprioritize what we think is important and what is not, I think when lockdown finally ends, we're coming back to a totally different world.
Yeah, well,
some people are going to be worse off and some people are going to be better off, depending on the stance they take.
Yeah, so for me, like on the hard facts, not too many things changed as being like a single in Berlin, and well, there like restaurants were closed and other things. So yeah, I did more workout, and so I didn't have to care for kids and was challenged by this. But I certainly found some time to think about things. But I sort of like always did this, and so this was like, yeah. And I actually, unfortunately, I didn't have so much quarantine and lockdown because I was working at the hospital. So it was only days for me, technically. And for the society as a whole, it was, I think they're like always like people, like they see negative points, which is good. And it's like very awful for a lot of people. And I completely understand this. But from like these changes, always potential arises, right? And as Gerardo and Pedzai already said, and Julia touched it. So in hindsight, I think this will be a time where we rethink things, and ranging from capitalism towards like how we do online studies and how we deal with online things and spiritual things. So yeah, if you look down in history, it was always wars. And if I would like have something that changes big, I would rather have a lockdown than a war, right? So I think if we can like, okay, good. Yeah.
Okay, on this note, thank you all. Thank you, Gennaro. Thank you, Pedzai. Thank you, Sönke, for your sharing and your insights. I think we all have something to reflect on. Thank you all to our dear audience for your time.